In Chapter 12 of Inflammation Nation, what did you mean by Step 10, love, happiness, social relationships, faith, and spiritual practices?
That's so important. All of those, by the way. John Lennon says, all you need is love, right? And so it's really key. We have to understand that what we understand is epigenetics is what we need to do with all our patients. That's the diet, the lifestyle, the environment, and then lastly is their belief system and community. And so genes are not fixed, they're in flux, okay? So heart disease does not run in a family. We used to think, oh, my grandfather, my dad, my uncle, my brother had a heart attack, so heart disease runs in my family. That's not necessarily true. What's happening is that the likelihood of those genes, you've been dealt that card, it's how you play that card is important. And so it's called the epigenetics. The diet, the lifestyle, environment, belief system is the same because you were taught the same thing from your dad, taught from the ground. You eat the same food, you grow the same disease. Okay? And in my lecture I talk about, in my book, I get into the detail where 97% of disease, chronic disease and cancer, is preventable. Only 2 to 3% of disease is genetically related. Everybody's so worried about their genes. I'm like, what can you do right now with the diet? Diet's number one, tobacco, getting the obesity down, getting the infections and the immune system stronger, and cleaning up the environment. So those are things that people right now can do every day to do that. But in order to actually transform, people need to have community. Right? So we understand this word called tribe. In our practice, especially with our cancer patients, we move cancer patients from a area or position where they used to be thinking of themselves as a cancer survivor, and we transition them to a cancer thriver. You can't just survive. Anybody can survive. We're Americans. We survive everything. Hurricanes and gun shootings and, all these kind of calamities, even elections. We can survive these things. But the idea is that it's getting the body to be stronger than it was before. And so you have to thrive, not just survive. And we help change the terrain of the individual. But how you change that terrain is not just the foods, it's not just the anti-inflammatory agents, it's not just the immune supportive agents, it's having that community. The data will show that when people have tribe, when people have a group of people that help them, who are supportive, not judgmental in their, coming to this conference, there's a bunch of tribe now. People are bonding with each other, like, hey, I started to change my diet, but I need a little help here, and everybody else thinks I'm kind of crazy in my family. But you need to have that support. The data shows that those people that have that community tribe live the longest. Living with a sense of purpose, you live the longest. In every single study with cancer, they live 15 years longer, women who just had support group. If we had a drug that gives you 30 days more in the ICU, again, blockbuster, and here's something, you just meet in a room and talk, or just on social media, we can get this. Now, we don't want pity party, you need support. But having that support of purpose, those people who survive the longest can see themselves in the future. Having a sense of service, charity, doesn't mean giving away things, but it just means like helping other people, even helping other people with your condition, in the same situation, right? You can share those experiences. But community, love, coexisting is really important, and that's the part that I think at the end of the day, most of the medicines are missing, right? Because we're just biochemically, pharmaceutically, I'm fixing your microbiome, I'm fixing your immune system, I'm fixing this. But the body's immune system and the body itself you're the conductor, you're the general, and you have to give direction. But if you're lonely, if you don't love yourself, if you don't love others, then you can't give the right proper direction. So a lot of people can take all the steps, but if they don't do step 10, which is very interesting, and in fact it was the shortest chapter in my book, because by the time I got there I was getting tired of writing actually, but on the revision and what I'm working on, that's going to be the data is just immense, and I can't say just from my experiences now over the last couple of years how important that is. And sometimes I start with my patient, we start with that because the rest is super easy. If something's motivated, you'll take the right things, we'll take the right foods, we'll give you the right supplements, or the medications if you need, we'll help you with side effects or whatever it is that we'll get you through. But this is the thing that we need to work on, is having community. And in our clinic in Sangevity, we're trying to build, and what we do is we build community. So we have community events, we bring in local lecturers, we bring in other traditional healers, because people need to understand there's a vast array of other integrative and natural practices that we've never even heard of sometimes. And this is what's been tried and tested and true for thousands of years. So bringing back that community, and if you look at every indigenous culture, from like the Native Americans and to even in India, there's a part of having that community that those people who survive, even the people in the blue zones, the people who live the longest, one of their main staples is community. So we have to look at when people survive the most. The problem is right now we are being disconnected with social media. Even though people have 1 million followers, they don't really communicate. Right? Kids sit behind a table at school and they're texting each other just right across the table. they're not communicating. They're not actually feeling connected. We have likes and dislikes, but we're not actually feeling that we have community. So the goal is really to kind of disconnect sometimes, I say, and then kind of get out there in the world and develop community. Some people are developing community for their food, or working farms and vegetables, and this is like some people are helping people just with service. And so the idea is that community is super important, and if you do that, then all the things that we give from steps 1 through 9 actually become fully implemented, and you get the full benefits.
In chapter 13 of Inflammation Nation, what did you mean by summary, moving forward and taking action?
So in my book, I use a lot of quotes, and a lot of people know me as the rock doc. I play guitar, I play drums. I use a lot of musical quotes in my book to make it some enlightening, to show some of my personality, and also sometimes it helps people remember things. And so, I have a quote from, Rush, which is, I will choose a path that's clear, I will choose free will. We need to understand that we need to be making the right decision. When patients see me, I use a lot of analogies in my book to make it easy for people to read. I take complex ideas and make it very simple. If people have ever watched the movie The Matrix, it's kind of like Morpheus who's sitting to Neo, and he gives him the opportunity. You can either take the red pill or the blue pill, right? The blue pills you can swallow the blue pill, and you can kind of go back in the world of ignorance and just kind of go on with life and think that's the drone, being the ant in the anthill of life kind of thing. Or you can take the red pill and you can understand some of these inconvenient, hidden, sometimes uncomfortable truths that we live in. But then it opens your mind for understanding, better choice, reasoning, and consciousness, then will lead you to liberation. And that's liberation of disease. It's liberation of getting stuck in debt. It's liberation of being the slave in this capitalistic system sometimes that people can't get out of. That's what we're trying to fight for, right? Universal health care or some kind of thing, or maybe less college debt. So the idea is that when I say moving forward is because after people read my book, the next step is to really take action. Right? And they have to move forward. So the goal is like, you can get all this knowledge, but if you don't take the first step, nothing's going to change. And the way I come from my perspective is I'm a little bit more with radical change, because we can't just do small increments anymore. I mean, we've been doing that for decades. Whether it's policy or politics or environment or food, we have to make drastic changes if you want to have drastic results. If you want to say, I want to feel the best, then an Olympic athlete doesn't wake up one day and say, I get a gold medal. They have to practice day in, day out, on and on and on. So a lot of people think, oh, they're naturally with that. They're naturally born that way. They're not. They work all day. So health is a practice. I tell people, I practice what I preach as much as I can. It's still a practice in motion. Every day, I have to do a little bit better. I'm not a purist, I'm a realist. Realistically, we need to make better decisions as often as we can to make sure that we're not getting stuck with all these things that have been marketed us to keep us where we're at, And I like to, in my book, I end my chapter with a quote from a band, which is very interesting, who's coming back this year, called Rage Against the Machine, a very political, active-oriented group. And it says, if it has to start somewhere, it has to start sometime. What better place than here, and what better time than now? That's what I like to end with.